Hi, I'm Anita Long, and I'm with VSAC. My title is Academic Support Coordinator, and I love math and science, so I'm excited to be the facilitator of this room. We have with us several folks in the IT information field, and they have a variety of careers, so I think they'll be a good set of folks to ask questions of. So this is the IT Information Technology Breakout Room. If you think you're in the wrong place, drop me a line and I'll work with you outside of the chat. I'm going to ask each of our presenters, I'll call on you and then ask you to introduce yourself and kind of say your name and where you're working and maybe your job title, since you're all kind of different job titles. And then we'll go around and see how we progress from there. Okay, Dan, we could start with you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Dan Bowles. I'm in South Burlington and I work at Alley. We're a digital agency making websites for news publications, and I'm a senior software engineer.
Great, thanks. And Forrest?
Hey, I'm Forrest, and I work at an AI company in Burlington called Faraday, and I'm a back-end software engineer.
Okay. And Joe?
I'm Joe Telensky. I'm in Colchester. I work right now for Vermont Legal Aid as an IT systems and network administrator. And actually next week I start transitioning into a role as the IT systems manager for Vermont Food Bank. So staying same field, moving employers. Vermont Legal Aid, for those of you who don't know, does civil defense and justice work for people throughout Vermont across to, I think we have 8 different projects running right now.
That's great. So as you can see, a range of parts of the IT field probably all have some things in common. And they each have some great videos on. If you haven't had a chance to see the VSAC videos, I enjoyed all 3 of yours. They were very fun, different, but very fun. So let me start by seeing if any of the students in here have specific questions for this panelist. And if you don't, I have questions, so. Okay, so let me ask the folks in the room, not the students in the room, why did you choose, or why do you think you were put in this room? What do you think, what's your interest here? Why here? Wonder if people aren't back yet. No, their names are in here.
Are the students able to talk?
They can't talk, but they can write in the, okay. Aiden says it seems interesting. The chat stays within our breakout room. Andrew is interested in having a career in IT. Okay, so Forrest, how did you get started?
I, personally speaking, I never really made, I was always someone who was interested in a variety of topics. I would say I didn't know I wanted to be a software engineer until probably my 3rd job as a software engineer. In college, I studied both biology, molecular biology, and computer science, and I could never make up my mind about which I wanted to pursue. And at the end of the day, I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was fun and enjoyed solving problems and working, writing code and understanding the systems that really run our lives at this point. And that's what led me to continue doing it.
Thanks. So that's kind of one end of the spectrum. And Joe, I think you started early pursuing some computer stuff, right?
Yeah, I started fairly early on. It was my junior year of high school. I went into the Essex technical program for Center of Technology Essex, I think is still their name, and focused on, just general kind of computer IT field there. That kind of started me down that path. And then I got so far into it that I was like, okay, I kind of like this. I enjoy it. I'll continue on. So I went to Champlain College, got my bachelor's there. And that got me, just kind of continuing in that direction. And then from there, I kind of just kept moving careers, focusing more in on like more general IT systems administration, but did a variety of things before that within the broader IT field.
And Dan, where do you fit on that spectrum of exploration of job?
I think similar with Joe. I had a computer growing up, young age, tinkered with it, messed with it, broke it a lot, much to my parents' chagrin. I was pretty set on doing some sort of industrial drafting or architectural design until I took a computer programming course on my senior year of high school. And so that drastically changed. I always loved the technology courses, hands-on stuff, building things, taking things apart. But moving into like the software realm wasn't really on my radar until I took a computer programming course and saw that I could, take input, do things, and send output. That was just I didn't really have any experience with that until that class. So that really changed from going into something with more like hands-on or drafting or drawing to computer programming.
So, let's see. How did you choose a college, or did you go directly to college from high school, and how did you choose that place? We'll start with Dan this time and sort of go in reverse.
Sure. I was lucky enough to live near the Rochester Institute of Technology, and I wanted to stay home. I didn't feel the need to go off and go to college somewhere. So it wasn't a very difficult decision. I wanted to go to RIT. My grandfather was a professor of printing there, which is really cool. So there's like a connection there. And I also applied to a local community college, but ultimately I wanted to go into the computer science degree program at RIT. That was just close to home.
Okay. And Joe, how did you decide on your post-high school education?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was kind of that I still wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So college was kind of a nice excuse to keep putting that decision off for a while. But, it was that I kind of accepted IT was the area I wanted to go in. I looked at a few different schools, applied at a few different schools throughout the process, and trying to think. So part of that for me was deciding what specialty I wanted to do in it, I guess. It was, I ended up at Champlain College because it was a little bit more generally focused and less like, this is how to use a router, or this is how to run this specific operating system, or like it gave me that little bit more broad, but still kept me more in the like system administration realm, because programming just wasn't anything that ever really appealed to me. So it was that kind of nice balance, and it was nice that it was close to home since I'm a native Vermonter. So it kind of gave me that good balance of being here and what I was looking for in a degree.
Great. Forrest, how did you choose your post-secondary?
I think similar to Joe, I definitely still didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I said, I was always someone who had a variety of interests. I never really had what I would say is a passion for any one thing. And so I was looking at schools primarily that had liberal arts educations. So more flexible, more varied curriculum, as opposed to applying directly to engineering programs or technical programs. And I actually stayed in Vermont and went to Middlebury College, which is it's a liberal arts school. So not particularly technical, but allowed me to explore a variety of subjects and really get a feel for what I wanted to do.
Great, thanks. So what do you think? Okay, how do you keep up with the changes in technology to stay up to date in the workplace? Forrest, you're sitting on my screen, so why don't you start with it?
That's a really good question. I, generally speaking, especially at the company that I work at now, it's an AI company. So when new technology comes out or when something is changing, we are usually, aware of that and trying to find ways that we can incorporate it into our business if it's applicable, or if it's something that we think is going to be useful. So I actually don't really have to go out of my way to stay on top of new technology. It's kind of part of the day-to-day job. I think as a software engineer, the ecosystems that you're working with, the technologies that you're working with, change pretty rapidly, and you generally just have to be aware of that and be ready to, adapt to changes as they come along.
Joe, you're doing something right now, I think, to keep current.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of ways in this. A big part of it for me is the tech I use is very driven by the users I support. So part of it is just kind of going to them and saying, what functions do you need? And then finding what the newest tech is to do that. Another really big part of how I've stayed on top of it traditionally is my previous job was with Champlain College. I taught while I was there. That kind of forced me to, keep developing my class, keep that up to date. So stay on top of that topic. And then also just the working with students, when you have all those students who are really passionate about this topic, they're going to know the newest tech way better than I am, honestly. Like, they're living this day in, day out. So I really enjoy having that opportunity to work with like work studies or similar, because they bring me these new ideas that aren't necessarily bound by like the traditional thoughts or the thoughts within the industry, because they're still kind of getting familiar with it. So it kind of makes me challenge my thought process and be like, oh, would this be a solution that would work? It may not be something I would have thought of, but here's this new tech you just read about and they're really interested in. So let's give it a try.
That's great. That gets back to something I want to get back to in a minute. But Dan, I noticed in your video, you talked about a lot of different software, some of which is pretty new, but I think you probably learned other stuff that's now old. So you mentioned PHP, CSS, Rust, JavaScript. You're using Slack right now. So how do you keep up with all that stuff?
Well, I think for me, it's helped, pardon my cat, it's helped that I have an employer that's, Allie's very focused on understanding that, the systems we rely on can change pretty rapidly. So, and we want to deliver what we're very client driven. We support a lot of news publications, especially right now. We've had luckily we've had a kind of a spike in client work, and so we're trying to solve problems quicker and sort of cheaper for our clients and for ourselves. So we build in professional development throughout our work weeks to help sort of offset that. Not only getting the work done we need to get done, but what else is out there to work on. I've taken on some things in my spare time because it's not necessarily work related. I don't think we're going to ever build games but if we ever do, I guess I'll be a little ready. Yeah, it's just a matter of seeing what would fit well in your job. But I think it's always just a matter of staying curious too, and if you really have a desire to learn something new, kind of like exercise or reading a book or something else, try to make time for it. So outside of work too, if you can. I know it is hard because a full work week it's full. It's a lot of time. So yeah, I think later in my career I've just tried to bring in other things to work on to keep myself engaged in my work.
I love that idea of curious, and I think you've all mentioned that at one point or another, that you're curious about things and you want to solve things, and that may or may not be directly computer related. So it sounds like this is a field where you're doing a lot of learning and sort of learning on a continuing basis to keep up. And there are lots of fields like that, but this is one that's a piece of it. So what are the things that are not specifically computers that interest you in your job, that make your job kind of enjoyable? And Dan, this time we'll start with you.
I like the interactions with my coworkers. We're a fully remote company, so before the pandemic, I've worked from home for almost 6 years now. So. But oddly, you feel more connected with people as you're in like, I mean, we use Slack to go to chat about ideas, but we also create silly emojis. We have inside jokes. We have ways to like keep track of random quotes people say throughout the day or throughout the years. We have all these tools and helpful things to help us stay connected. And I like the connection with the coworkers. And I really love helping our clients solve problems, big or small, getting something to render on a page or a bigger solution where they come back and like, this is exactly what we want, or just all the interactions like that. It really adds value to, sort of adds that ritual where you sort of like a doctor showing up for his patients or a teacher showing up for their students. I'm here not for the code more or less, but for the helping people do their jobs better.
And Forrest, you also mentioned your coworkers in your video. You want to say something about what you enjoy about your work that's not just the computer stuff?
Yeah, similar to Dan, I really love the teamwork aspect of it. In any team, in any job, you're going to have to work with other people. In engineering and at Faraday, we have a very close relationship with the other engineers on our team, and we have to work with them quite a bit, every single day, in fact. And I love that aspect of it. I love working with other people. And then on top of that, Faraday is a very small company, which means that I have opportunities for project management and, really having a say for what direction the company pursues and with its technology, it's fun to think about those higher level problems as well, in addition to solving, small or technical problems on a day-to-day basis.
What's project management? What does that mean?
Another good question. I would say project management is just the process of organizing and breaking down a project into manageable chunks so that you can, one, predict and track it, and two, hopefully deliver results on time and to expectations.
Nice, thank you. So Joe, I'm going to twist it to you a little bit because you've talked about working with students and having work study people and supervising people. Can you talk a little bit about the aspect of your job that's overseeing people? And then I'm going to give you two questions because you have chosen some kind of community focused places to work. Can you talk about that, the importance of that in your work?
Yeah, so I mean, the overseeing people part of it, I think the part I really enjoy about that, and I kind of miss because the job I'm in right now, I don't have too much of that, is really getting to get to know them and focus on their career growth goals. I have my own that I'm working towards, but also it put me in a really good position to be like, oh yeah, one of the students who worked for me was going into data analytics. So it was, yes, we're mostly doing help desk and system administration type stuff, but there are still times that we have to run reports or get information for people to kind of justify budgets. So I could say, oh yeah, here's how to get into the data, go process it, make it look pretty, give us a good proposal on what our needs are and figure that out. So it was, really finding those opportunities to put them on projects that fit in with their career goals and what their passions were. So that was one of the most enjoyable things, I think, for me about routinely managing people, was that really helping them explore their career path and how they want to grow as an individual. The community focus part has been a really big part for me. My first full-time job, I was with a computer manufacturer in the area, and that I was doing initially manufacturing and support. And one of the main reasons I left them actually was one of the clients I had to support was a military contractor. And it was this kind of like really deciding, like, do I really want to be fixing computers that are going on Humvees and being deployed to the Middle East? Just like there was that really big ethical dilemma for me, and that kind of drove me away from that. And I kind of had to start deciding from there. And I found a lot of the work I do, I find it to be I have a lot more passion for it and motivation when I have a mission to rely on. So, like Champlain, we were trying to educate people and further their career goals. Vermont Legal Aid, we're trying to defend justice and the rights of Vermonters and make sure that discrimination isn't happening, equal access is there. People aren't exploiting our senior citizens in long-term care facilities. So like, no, my IT work isn't directly supporting that, but at the same time, I'm able to, help them learn, oh yeah, here's how to run a Zoom call so that we can tell people how to register for the stimulus checks when you're in this really weird situation. Or, I get to be a part of that, even if I am behind the scenes and support it. So it's been really good for me to be able to say, yeah, when I go in every day, I may not make as much as if I was in some private practice that, may not be as socially conscious, or even if they are, I could still go into private businesses that are focused on the betterment of the world. But that's a big part of it for me, is I really want to help my community in the work I do. So that's how I kind of pick my employers and my path.
So lots of ways to pick employers, but still within your field. So Forrest, what are some of the outside of sort of computer, working as a computer person, what are some of the passions that bring you to this work, or to your job, to your particular job?
The thing I would say there is that the word passion is thrown around a lot in terms of picking your career path. And I think in my case in particular, I wouldn't say that I've ever had one guiding passion, or necessarily something that like makes me really passionate about one specific thing. It's more just like Dan said, it's a general curiosity, it's the desire to solve problems and to be challenged. And that is something that I have no shortage of at this job. So, there's always a challenge. There's always some new problem that's put in front of me that's, bigger than the last one and harder than the last one. And so there's always something to think about, and there's learning along the way, and constant challenge and curiosity, and exploring new problem spaces, which is really fun.
Dan, you want to chime in on any of that? Your passions inside work or maybe outside of work?
Yeah, I'll speak again to the curiosity. It's helps. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really passionate about writing code. It's more the problem solving, like Forrest said. I like the idea. I'm less about shiny web interfaces as I was early in my career, and I'm a lot more about algorithms, solving problems, something that's like more under the hood that works really well or really efficiently or takes up less space or stuff like that. So just iterating over what I've done in the past and seeing if I can do it with maybe not so much less code, but better ideas in place, more knowledge that I've taken throughout my career. But yeah, like I said in my video, I like to, I have a absurd Lego collection as well. So that helps me get that hands-on when I need to. I have not had the time for it because I'm also I'm exploring writing a game with Rust, which has been a ton of fun. So yeah, just like, it's not really about like what you want to do for a career. I think it's just like, what do you like? Do you like to, take things apart or see how things work? There's all, it's not about like I said, it's not about like, I like writing software, but it's like more like I like building things in any capacity. I like building things, taking them apart, making them better. I started my career as a QA engineer, so I was just hired to break stuff, and it was fun to go about that route as well. I didn't really make a lot of friends with developers, but that's okay.
So what's a QA engineer? Quality
assurance.
Okay.
So the idea is that you write software as a developer, but developers can only, I feel like developers test their software with a sort of bias. We might not sort of figure out all the edge cases that someone that is more experienced in software quality assurance is. So they could go through and run certain tests or run a specific test to make sure a certain thing happens. So I was hired early in my career to do that. It was all very manual test cases written out in a Word document, and but then it slowly turned into writing code to automate other tests. So writing code to stress test software systems, which is a lot of fun. So like it really tapped into that, like breaking things and seeing how things worked.
Mhm. So if you want to be like Wreck-It Ralph, you can go into quality assurance and try to break things. People pay you to do that. It's exciting. As a math nerd, I can really resonate, or really reminds me of writing beautiful math. It's not just about getting it right. It's about doing it in a way that's really slick and efficient, and then you feel something really cool about it. So I like that. All right, so we have a question about what kind of experience can students pursue, maybe in high school, maybe as a job, maybe as an internship or after school, that might help them kind of get a glimpse into this world or get some experiences. All right, so Dan.
Was that me? I think what's really cool about software development right now, and has been for quite some time, is that you can start making stuff for free. You can HTML is free, JavaScript's free, web browsers are free. There's free languages you can run. There's so many things and tools you can install for free that you can just explore and try to make. If you have an idea for something you want to write, even if it's a simple hello world or a way to list folders in a directory or files in a directory, versus I have saved no money in pursuing other hobbies, photography, Lego, audio, whereas tapping into this is more of a hobby and seeing if you like it. It's like I said, it's free. It's really, and the resources are almost overwhelming. So I can't really offer any advice on how to pick something and go with it. But I've found a lot of communities over the years that are just so helpful and open to new users and new people learning things. That's kind of what brings me to other languages at this point in my career, is just that more of that community than if you ask a question, people are more than happy to help. So yeah, I think it's try to write something, try to make something happen on the screen. It can be the simplest thing, and don't worry about if it's good or better than this, and keep yourself away from comparing to other people's projects. But just dip your toes in the water and see if you like it.
Get out there and try some. Forrest, what would you recommend?
I would second exactly what Dan just said. Just get out there and try things. I think in general, the surest way to find out if you like something is just to try it. See what you feel when you do it. Be honest with yourself about what that is. Don't push yourself into anything that you don't actually enjoy, but try new things, see what your experiences are. I think the most important experiences in my path to being a software engineer have been the ones that I didn't like, because they guided me away from things that I thought I wanted to do, and I found out I didn't. I did several research internships and discovered I didn't want to do a PhD. And it's just as important as doing things you enjoy as doing things you don't enjoy. Both of those in their own way guide you towards what you really like doing.
That's great. Thank you. Joe, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so in my area, it's
Okay, Joe is frozen.
definitely a little harder because it's either free. Am I back?
Yes, you're
No?
good.
Oh, okay, I'm good now. Okay. Yeah, so free in my area, or in my field, is a little harder. You don't necessarily need new technology, but you can often go buy an old server and start playing around with it. Microsoft will give you a lot of their software free if you reach out to them as a student and say, hey, I want to learn how to do this. So you can still get a lot of the software licenses free. Along those lines also, I used to support our game design and development programs when I was at Champlain College. So adding to what Dan and Forrest are saying, places like Unreal Engine or Unity started changing their licensing models so that you can get their tools free and start building games, and then they just take a percentage of any revenue you make off of it. So, you can really get into that type of field completely free beyond having to have a computer to write the code on. the other big area, it's that find the like school or IT department that's willing to take you in as a intern or just entry level technician to kind of start familiarizing yourself with it. Or if you really want to do it on your own, there's a lot of different like cybersecurity contests and things like that nationally that you can enter and start kind of familiarizing yourself with that whole aspect of, like the white hat hacking type stuff where you kind of learn how to defend against cyber threats.
Real question for you, Joe. What about like simple web server applications on like a Raspberry Pi or something like that for like really entry level development?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it is. The hardware is not really a barrier anymore. You can run almost any service or server on just about anything. And to Forrest's point, a Raspberry Pi is really enough to do it. The reason you need the bigger hardware is, when you have 1,000 people trying to access it at the same time. But if it's just you and your friends trying to access a Minecraft server, some 10-year-old desktop's going to do it for you.
Well, that's great. So sort of reaching out, Patrick Leduc, who was the Chief Information Officer at VSAC. I'm not sure what to see. I see, Patrick, this is why I needed you to speak. Anyway, he has done a lot of IT at VSAC and has asked a question. So can you talk about how much you get to learn about the business you're in outside of the computers? And Joe, you started this a little bit. So yeah, lots of businesses need computers, but you're learning a whole lot of other things too. So can you talk about those other things?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's part of what I really enjoy actually about the field I went into is that I get to be involved in those business parts. Whether it be writing computer use and security policies or going over a budget with someone, especially in the nonprofit sector, we have really strict auditing requirements. So a significant chunk of my job is actually just going through and coding everything against the right budget and the right grant to make sure that that's done properly. But I also, get to do that more business analyst type role where I really focus more on the business need and less on the tech. And sometimes the answer isn't tech. We had our printers fail in one of our offices recently. So the answer was they swapped back to using a typewriter to send letters out. It's that tech isn't always the answer. And if it gets in the way, then it's let's find a different solution for you. So it's really focusing on, I get to interact with everyone in the organization. I'm one of the only ones in our company that goes to all of our offices regularly. So it's really interesting in that I get to learn what everyone's job is and learn how to help them do that job better. And sometimes it's not me that's helping them, but I just direct them in the right way.
What have you learned about the work of Vermont Legal Aid?
Yeah,
for.
That's where it's hard with Vermont Legal Aid because I've only been there a year and we actually, like I said, we have 8 different projects. So I've learned a lot about the work we do, but at the same time, like it's at such a high level. When I was at Champlain would probably be a better example. I got to be involved in the development of new majors there. So we'd be in meetings to be looking at what are the career needs going to be in 5 years? What are the majors that we can have for that? And like our faculty would be going to meet with potential employers and saying like, what do you want from a new employee? What do you want from that entry level job? So I'd get to kind of help be in those meetings, not necessarily to help develop the curriculum, but to at least be there to be like, oh yeah, that is technically feasible. Or no, that's going to cost you way too much. There's no way we're going to be able to run that degree. So it was really neat to be part of that and get that exposure.
Right. Dan, what kind of, Allie is, I don't know, I'll let you answer the question. What have you learned about the field that your clients are in or that your group works with?
So I guess I can speak most to, I've done a lot of work with the Kaiser Family Foundation. They're a nonprofit that publishes a lot of medical and health data. And so it's just interesting to see who they want to deliver information to. Like I've never really heard about, I hadn't heard a lot about a lot of our clients, but it's overall, it's figuring out how each of them wants to relay data. I've worked on things from helping clients build them tools to make a WordPress post or an article or a gallery, all sorts of things, to helping them make full page data visualizations that go through county level data, state level data, different entrepreneurship indicators and all sorts of things. So it's, you learn a lot about how they want to display data and like what their goals are as a company. We have our own, our general goal is to deliver the best possible solutions for our clients, and obviously ship on time and on budget's always sort of in there as well. That unspoken desire. And then you figure out how much they have to spend too. It's interesting to we have a lot of big clients who work with the Brookings Institute, where they're just like a lot of big retainers for us to just sort of continue to maintain their site. And we have smaller clients that really want to do a lot, but they can't. So it's a matter of like helping them, steering them to solutions that will work right now, and what can we get you in the future. And it's just interesting to interact with them. We don't interact with them much on a daily basis. We have what's called a product owner on our team, who is the main face of our team that helps navigate what we need to do and what priorities we need to have for our clients. Yeah, just I like I like hearing about what they send out for information, from articles to data and all sorts of things.
A little more of that curiosity thing. You get to see a lot of different things, keeps you entertained or challenged. Forrest, I don't know what Faraday does at this point, but maybe you can tell us about what you've had to learn that's not computers that your job has
Yeah, definitely. Like, so as I mentioned before, I've had the opportunity to manage a couple projects at Faraday, including transitions between a couple significant infrastructure projects, which that was quite a learning curve on its own, just the actual project management, and then additionally, managing a team of people is a bit different than my normal day-to-day technical work. And then on top of that, I try to go out of my way to learn a little bit about the business and have an awareness of how the business operates, and what our business model is, and how we're working with clients. And of course, Faraday being an AI company doing machine learning, there's always opportunities to learn about machine learning and the actual algorithms that we're using. And that's a little bit more math heavy, which is kind of fun. But yeah, so there's a variety of opportunities depending on what exactly you're interested in learning about.
Thank you. Kathy Tierney, in her opening talk with students, talked about the average number of jobs for people these days is 12 over your career, and I think I've hit that mark. Perhaps it depends a little bit if you define careers or jobs, because I've had some of each. And one of the things I'm always looking for is a different challenge. So what I'm hearing from all of you folks is that you find other parts of this work that's interesting, it's curious, challenging. So, I'm sorry, there's another question. What computer language would you say is a must know before leaving high school? At what level of proficiency do you recommend? What are other computer languages that might be familiar with? Well, this is interesting. I wonder what you might have to say about that, Forrest.
I think in general, my perspective when it comes to how to prepare or what to learn is always going to be that there is no must. There is, like, you don't have to do anything. There is no should, like what you should do, what you have to do. It's more of a process of exploration. Explore, find things you like to do, find things that excite you and that you enjoy doing, and that motivates you to go back to it. And if that happens to be, if you're in high school and you happen to discover that you really love computers or technology, great, go pursue that. But, personally speaking, I was not that person. I kind of explored it a little bit, but it was never something that I really loved. I was more focused on, at the time, like I thought I might've been a physical trainer or something like that. I was much more focused on training and nutrition as it related to sports. But if you are passionate about or excited about computer technology, then the primary languages today, the easiest one that I think, or at least I think the easiest to pick up is Python. It's also a very widely used language in the industry, and it's really becoming much more prominent now with some recent updates in recent years. For low-level languages, there's some new languages, Rust being one that Dan talked about, which is a really exciting new embedded language. JavaScript also, Dan mentioned that. And then Go is another one. Those are kind of the four main languages. There's other languages depending on what you're working in. If you're doing web development, you're probably going to be exposed to some HTML, stuff like that. But yeah, in general, I think explore the things you're interested in. Python, for anyone who's trying to get a start, is a really relatively low barrier to entry language that has the potential. You can do anything you want to do in Python if you decide that that's what you want to do. So starting there is a good place to start because it pretty much opens up all the doors.
Oh, great. There's a couple of responses to that in the chat, and I want to talk about that, but there is no magic bullet language. I think you're learning a technique, you're learning a logic, you're learning process, and the languages change over time. If I told you the languages I had to learn in college, you would not have heard of any of them. So they change, but they translate. So Patrick, who hires people, says, great answer, Forrest. From a hiring perspective, I'm always looking for that exploratory mindset. The tools will change over time. It's the attributes of the individual that I always look for first. And Andrew is asking about C++. Should I go to someone else? Joe, do you want to talk about C? Is that a good language to start with?
Honestly, for me, I don't know any code. I can get by in system administration without any of it. There's some scripting that I need to know. PowerShell is a pretty common one for Windows system administration, but to Forrest's point, Python is probably the main entry one I'd recommend. Like beyond programming, it's used really heavily for system automation, cybersecurity type tasks. It's the kind of go-to in like the IT sysadmin field of that's the only language I would bother learning if I were to learn one.
Great. So I'm hearing a lot of shoulds, not so much shoulds. Dan, you were nodding your head a little bit. You want to chime in, or?
Yeah, I started. I learned C in high school, and C++ was taught in college, and it was very difficult for my brain to understand it. But my immediate answer was unfortunately JavaScript. And the reason I say unfortunately, because it is a language with some quirks. It is a language that is designed, I don't think it was designed to do everything that it's doing right now, but it's everywhere. But I would also very much recommend Python. It's not something I've used in a long, long time, but when I used it, it was just felt very enjoyable and fun. And Rust is very, very fun. I think the reason I'm in Rust now is because I have an appreciation of what the language can do. But when I started at Alley, I didn't know any PHP, and so and I thought I knew enough JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and all that to get by. But what we were doing here was well beyond, I think, my skill set. So there was a period of time where I was honestly wondering why they hired me and what they saw. And it was, but it is that exploratory trait. It's not about what you know, how many lines of code you can write a search algorithm, or it's like if you show this eagerness to, I want to be here for your company's mission. I want to be here for my own mission. Or I want to be here because I want to build what you're building, and I'll do whatever it takes, or I can, you just have to start somewhere. So it's, yeah, it's more about, yeah, I think Python and JavaScript. JavaScript has many flavors. Node, JavaScript can go anywhere, I think Python can. I think the difference is Python is I think, more well suited for a lot more things. Data science being one of them, which is something I've been interested in. Python always comes up when it comes to data science, just like language processing. I'm not sure why, but it's always there. So, but unfortunately with Python, I like brackets, and Python doesn't have brackets. I need brackets and semicolons and structure. So Rust, sometimes you need to not include a semicolon, and it honestly weirds me out. And so, but the compiler lets you know. Compiled languages are great because they can be really helpful. They can point you to what I mean by compiled language is you have to run a command to build the software, and C++ is a compiled language. JavaScript is not. The browser is your compiler. So the browser can blow up and cause great errors, and you can't get anywhere. Or in Node, it's a console blow up. So I don't recall if Python's compiled. I don't think it is, but yeah, that's my long-winded answer. Python and JavaScript, and Rust, because I like it.
And Rust, and that's just R-U-S-T, like the, okay.
Ellie,
So,
do you mind if I chime in on the C++
Forrest?
thing real quick?
No, go please.
So actually, the first two jobs I had were C and C++ development, all low-level embedded. So my advice, Andrew, depending on the project you're working on, Dan's talked about Rust a lot. Rust is a really promising embedded languages or embedded language. It's often described as, you know, C if it were designed better, basically. Rust is really great and has grown to prominence very quickly. As in the last couple of years, Firefox is actually the sponsor of the Rust language and developing Rust, and they rebuilt their whole browser with a focus on security and speed using Rust. If you were just starting out and learning, Rust can be hard to learn because it's a very, very strict language, but it is very well documented. So if you look online, the Rust book has excellent documentation for the language and can walk you through learning the language and doing, you know, some small projects and getting a feel for it. And I do think that Rust will displace C and C++ in the coming years. Companies like Microsoft have already done analysis of if they rebuilt their embedded code base if all they did was translate their embedded code base from C, C++ to Rust, it eliminates something like 70% of bugs off the top just by using Rust because of the way the language is designed and how strict it is when it comes to compiling. So it's a really valuable language, and you know, depending on the application, if you're working with a microcontroller that doesn't have compiler support for Rust, then you'll probably have to use C or C++. But if you are working in something that has support for Rust, my advice would be use Rust.
Thank you all so much. We're coming towards the end of our time, and I wonder if any of you has a parting remark you want to make, or where you are. Seeing nothing and nothing new in the chat. This is the I'm just hopefully dropping in the chat. This is where you can find the videos. Oops, one more question. So if you want to go see Dan, Joe, and or Forrest's video, they're out there, as well as many others that people who couldn't attend today. Lauren, did you have a question you wanted to drop in there? What is words of encouragement? What are your words of encouragement? I'll let it be a free for all. Jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with that, it's something to just play with. You know, you don't have to be great at it. You can make mistakes. Things come up. You know, I've definitely broken systems before, and it's that you can always fix it. It's always going to come back. So, you know, just keep at it, keep playing with it. And it's a great thing to just kind of explore with, because it's not like something physical where when you break it, it may not be able to be reassembled. So you really do get to just do that kind of scientific approach in the exploration of like, oh, I want to see what's going to happen here. And it's great in that once you know the fundamentals, it's pretty easy to swap what you do specifically within this field. You can change so drastically in the kind of industry you work in.
Yeah, I'll add that don't worry so much about what everybody else is doing. I've gotten roped into that of I should really, people are talking about this or talking about this. If there's interest for you in one thing, run with it and try not to worry too much about if you're doing it the right way or the best way or the correct way or the fastest way or with the right tools, or because it's really easy to get sidetracked with, I think, especially with web development. It's web development. Everything is so fast. Versions come out quickly. Things change. Everyone's over here. Everyone's over there. So, yeah, don't rush yourself. Take your time. You got plenty of time to figure out how to make a button super shiny or whatever. You know, whatever it is you're wanting to do. You got plenty of time. So take your time.
And yeah, I think just like Joe said, you know, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be discouraged when things don't work. There's always challenges. There are always things that are going to break. There are always things that won't work. It's impossible to write perfect code. So don't worry about writing anything perfect or making anything perfect. And don't be discouraged if it's really hard to get something to even work in the first place. You know, that's always going to be the case. Just the things you're working on will get harder.
Well, thank you all so much for your time today. Patrick encourages you also, students, if you can schedule a job shadow with somebody in the field, IT, these different varieties of IT, we have opportunities here in Vermont to shadow and check with your school counselor and see, or your workforce school to work coordinator to see where you might be able to find some job shadowing. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate your expertise. Thanks for your videos. And thanks to VSAC for bringing us all together. I hope everyone had a good time. And that's all we have. This is the end of Vermont Career Connect for today. And from here, you should just check in with your teacher wherever you are. We are finished. So thank you very much.
Take care, everybody.